Without further ado, I introduce to you Mary Reynolds. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Robert. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning on this webinar. As stated, I'll be talking about my personal journey, or our personal journey from paper to digital. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Just one second. All right, so this is our journey from paper to digital and some of the lessons that we learned along the way. Again, my name is Mary Reynolds, and I am the collection system maintenance scheduler at Central Sand. So, a brief overview, I'll talk a little bit about Central Sand, and then I'll talk about how it started, how our journey started. So, the decision, the timeline, the transition, the arrival. Then we'll make a U turn and we'll start this journey again. But this time we'll talk about some of the lessons that we learned along the way. So, we'll go back and talk about before the decision, how to prepare to transition, some site visit tips, testing, and then some items to keep in mind at the very end. Alrighty, so a little bit about Central Sand. Full name is Central Contra Costa Sanitary District. That's a mouthful, so we say Central Sand. It was a special district established in 1946. Our headquarters is in Martinez, right at the Interstate 680 and Highway 4. We have 281 employees, and our services, we serve nearly 500,000 residents, over 3,000 businesses in 13 cities. And our service area covers approximately 145 square miles. This is our service area. Martinez to the north, all the way down to San Ramon in the south. The green areas are full service. So we collect their sewage and also treat the wastewater and provide household hazardous waste disposal for everyone in green. In purple, the Concord Clayton areas, we treat the wastewater, but we don't maintain the collection system. And the yellow areas that you see in Martinez and a little bit in San Ramon, we provide household hazardous waste disposal services, but we do not maintain their collection system or treat the wastewater. The square in the middle of the map is where our collection system operations building is in Walnut Creek. And again, as mentioned, the circle in Martinez is where our headquarters are. So our collection system is responsible for over 1,500 miles of gravity pipe. We maintain, clean, and repair those. Also have 21 miles of force mains and 18 pump stations. Our treatment plant collects and cleans over 13 billion gallons of wastewater each year. And from that, we have recycled water, which is approximately 2 million gallons a day. And it's used in plant and also for industrial and landscape irrigation. Our household hazardous waste collection facility collects about 2 million pounds of waste each year, and they're able to recycle and reuse about 90% of that. So here's some photos of our headquarter office building, aerial photos of the plant, and also the household hazardous waste collection facility. All these places are in Martinez, as mentioned. And then this is our collection system operations building in Walnut Creek with a picture of the field crews and staff in the upper left corner. That's the building that I work in my department. So a little bit about how it all started. I was hired by Central Sand in late 2007. My original title was maintenance coordinator at the collection system operations division. I would call it CSO. I'll refer to CSO a little bit in this presentation. So that's what it means. That's the department I started in and where I still am. My main job functions were to answer the sewer emergency line and to also dispatch. I also provided computer support for the field crews, so giving access to maintenance information that they didn't have readily available in the field. And also, I was tasked to create an SOP for our preventative maintenance schedule process. This was an intense process. It used to span over several days and took numerous programs to operate. And the entire process lived inside of the head of my predecessor. So there were certain steps that needed to happen in order for us to generate our schedules on a monthly basis. And the order that these steps were to be taken, it wasn't written down. So when I first started with the district, that was part of the tasks for me to write it down so that anyone could process these schedules and not just one person. Then we were using the asset management system, Acela. It was a customized version of Acela. It was programmed and tailored for CSO's use. So it really didn't look like Acela looks out of the box. I'll show some screenshots in a moment. And it was a hybrid work environment. There were some digital aspects, but the majority of the work done by the field crew was done on paper forms. So here's an example of one of the paper forms that our crew used to fill out. A lot of boxes, a lot of information. This took a while to learn how to read and what information was necessary and what you could kind of ignore, but it was pretty intimidating. And we would get one of these sheets of paper per field crew per day. So you're thinking approximately anywhere between 10 to 16 pieces of paper like this would come in. The different sections were on different colors. So this is for the riding section, one of the cleaning sections. And there are 5 sections. So riding, hydro, construction, CCTV, and then we have a locating crew as well. And they all look similar to this. And here's a screenshot of Acela. I'm sorry, it's a little bit blurry, but this is kind of what the customized version of Acela we were using then looked like. Trying to figure out how to input information in here was a little intimidating at first as well, but it really did provide a lot of information that we needed to run CSO effectively back then. As mentioned, our PM scheduling process was pretty intense. So this is just a screenshot of the SOP that we created, the different files that were inside of there. I'll show a glimpse of my original manual. So this is my handwritten manual that when I first started, the different screenshots and the different notes on what needed to go, what order things needed to be taken in order to run preventative maintenance schedules every month. And
excuse me, Mary. We're not saying the slide didn't shift.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It won't go. I'm sorry. But this is kind of an idea of what of the different sections. And it was a handwritten screenshot of all of the schedule process that that everyone had to do every month. It took several days. And like I said before, it spanned over several programs. So it was a pretty intense process. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to move to a different program. So again, with how we got started, in 2014, our GIS group was looking to upgrade the mapping system. The old one was no longer supported. It was no longer able to be upgraded. So they were looking to upgrade. In that, they chose Esri. At the same time, CSO wanted to move from all the paper forms that we had to a digital process, something that was more efficient. Acela was no longer supported in its custom state. We were no longer able to upgrade and get the support needed when something stopped working. We also had to duplicate our entry. Things needed to be input into various programs because the reports that were spit out by Acela were functional, but they weren't exactly easy to read. They weren't easy to manipulate. And then we wanted to make sure that the maintenance information that was being entered was accessible to not only the field crew, but the rest of the district as well. There were some aspects of the information that needed to wait until the end of the month before people could actually see when a particular sewer main was cleaned or how it was maintained or what the results were. So by moving to a digital platform, we would be able to get that, push that information out faster and just be more efficient as an organization. So in 2015, the decision was made. Central Sand selected Cityworks. That decision was made fairly quickly, but here are some reasons why. Cityworks is an Esri Platinum partner. So that means that the integration between Esri and Cityworks is seamless. So there wasn't a lot of thought between the two programs. It provided the mobile functionality that CSO was looking for. So there would be not, the paper forms would not be a big factor anymore. It also had crystal reports, which, as I mentioned, Acella's reports weren't as robust. So this platform allowed us to have better reporting functions. And it was a familiar name. There were some supervisors and managers that were familiar with other utilities using Cityworks, and it was something that came up in some meetings. So here's a warning, the road gets a little bit slippery ahead. Here's our timeline for changes that were made. As you can see, we went through a lot of software changes in a fairly short amount of time. Not all of these are relevant to my department, so I'm going to kind of take them away. The ones that are left are directly relevant to CSO. So we changed, as mentioned, GIS changed our mapping system, Esri. That's something we had to learn. GeoPortal is our map viewer. So the way that we looked at the maps and dispatch phone calls for sewer emergency changed. Our CMMS Cityworks changed as well. Our CCTV software, IT Pipes, changed. And also our USA locating software, DigSmart, changed. So in under 2 years, we pretty much changed the way that we did business completely. This was an intimidating time, but I kind of related to ripping the Band-Aid off. It was really no time to get acclimated to one thing because you were constantly learning something else. But we had an excellent support team, so they were able to get us through and provide the training that we needed, but it was definitely a lot in a short amount of time. So then we started the transition process for Cityworks. A consultant was selected, and they were familiar with implementing the software with other agencies. So that was very helpful. They were familiar with the process and able to tell us what to expect ahead. We had a site visit with the city of Oakland. One of the managers was familiar with another manager there, and they were using Cityworks. So we were able to go there and see Cityworks in action. We were able to ask questions and just, find out their overall feel for the program. There were tons of meetings, tons of conference calls, a lot of back and forth about, what would be coming next and what to expect. And then we had to test. There was a test site that was given to us, and we were asked to test as much as possible. We were provided training from the consultant and also from our GIS staff in testing the software and just trying to get it where we needed it to be. Then we arrived. Our Cityworks Go Live happened late 2016, and it happened for the office staff first. Our iPads weren't available for the field crews until early 2017, but that's when we fully went digital. Between late 2016 and early 2017, we had to make the software do something it wasn't designed to do. We still had to provide the paper maps and the paper schedules for the field crew because they didn't have their tablets available for use yet. And then we also had the legacy, the historical data imported by the consultant. We had 10 years of data imported. And that was for a regulatory reason, so that we were able to see history before Cityworks against different sewer mains. We still have ongoing updates and improvements. We're still giving feedback to Cityworks on functions that we would like to see. There's forums and regional user groups that we're a part of and able to um, that we're able to provide feedback, basically how we like the software, what we would like to see different, things like that. And we're still evaluating our workflow. That's a continuous aspect. We're not just, it's not just implemented and done. We're still making sure that we're being as efficient as we can. So this is a screenshot of what our geo portal, our map viewer looks like. So I picked a sewer main that purposely doesn't have a lot of work orders against it, just so you can see there's Cityworks work orders and there's legacy work orders. So the legacy is what was imported in, and then the Cityworks work orders is what's actually input in Cityworks now. It's really nice, clean, easy to read. You're able to see the status that the work order's in. If you hover over, if this was a live link, we could hover over the work order number. It will open the work order in Cityworks. We're able to see the results, any comments, who the field crew was, what kind of tool they use. So all the information is available right at our fingertips, and it's available to anyone within the district. So it's really a nice, clean format. This is a screenshot of what the Cityworks Office and tablet version looks like. This is a creek crossing work order, but the pink fields are what's required. So those fields are required to be input in by the field crew before the work order can be closed. And there's a space for comments, and there's also space for any notes that need to be relayed to the field crew if there's access issues or if they need to check something specific. This is what it looks like. This is what the tablet version looks like on their iPad. There's also here is a close-up of the map. So those blue dots actually represent their work. So if they have work that's assigned to them for this month, those blue dot, they can click on a blue dot and it will open up their work order and they're able to complete it from there. So this was a huge step up from having to highlight a paper map and figure out, physically map their way out for the month. They're able to see it graphically, which is wonderful. And we also, as mentioned before, there's also mobile functionality. There's a mobile app for Cityworks. So this is what the mobile app looks like. The map on the left-hand side with the red wrenches, those wrenches represent their work. It's the same as the blue dots on the previous screen. And then on the right-hand side is an open work order. So when they click on that work order, it opens up and they're able to input the same information that they could on the tablet version, but it's a little bit bigger and more user-friendly for them. So now we're going to start again, but this time we're going to talk about some of the lessons learned in the process. So now we're going to talk about before you make a decision. Who all should be involved before committing to a particular CMMS? An implementation team. I highly recommend this. Our GIS staff served as our implementation team, and it was great having them on board. It was wonderful having them to ask questions and to be that liaison between us, the consultants, and also the software company. They were familiar with the district. They were familiar with what we needed, specifically at CSO. They were awesome. If you don't have that, I highly suggest it. I highly suggest also having a representative from all the end users in the same room. So somebody from the office staff, a supervisor, superintendent, managers, field crews, IT, whoever's going to use the program, I suggest sitting in the same room and just talking about what the needs are, what you must have, what would be nice to have, what's a deal breaker. That conversation should happen before deciding. Just because it's easier to change something in the beginning before you implement it than it is after everything is said and done. What we found is, though Cityworks is great and it fits our needs, there may have been something that, if we had talked about it, may have fit a little bit better. So why? It also, having this conversation, eliminates misunderstandings. Everyone's in the same room, they have the same information, they're all getting it at the same time. So there's no room for expectations, for false expectations, I should say. There were some things that I was told in the beginning that the software may be able to do, and it turned out not to be able to do that. So it just would have been a little bit easier knowing what we were getting into before the decision was made. Also, each of the representatives brings a different aspect. They bring a different perspective from their job function. So they're able to ask questions that the implementation team may not have thought about, or even some of the representatives may not have thought about. So it's just nice to be able to have the conversation. It may be a long day, it may be a lot of differing opinions, but it's nice to be able to kind of sort that out in the beginning before moving forward with something, with the software. So now you've made a decision and you're preparing to transition. These are some of the steps that I find would be really helpful in order to prepare, in order to make that jump. You want to write out your current workflow now. Your consultant is going to ask for that. Your implementation team is going to ask for that. So it's easier to do it when there's no pressure. So you want to get started working on that now, writing out every aspect that you can. Also, take the time to assess your process. How can you be more efficient? How can you eliminate some of the duplicate things that you may do in your job? This is the time to evaluate everything, how you're doing business. You want to define everything, even things that you may feel are obvious. Understand this workflow is going to be a living document. It's going to follow you throughout this process. So it's going to go across different companies, different utilities, different departments. What one thing means to your utility may not mean the same thing to whoever's reading it. So you want to eliminate misunderstandings and just define everything. And then you want to be flexible and patient. This is a long process. It takes a lot of patience. So you just want to kind of understand what's happening and just go with the flow. Lastly, be prepared to stop. Not everyone is going to move at the same pace. So just move how you move and wait for others to catch up. Or sometimes others may they may have to wait on you. And that's part of being flexible. You want to just make sure that you know what's coming and be ready for the journey. This is a screenshot of Acela and my markups. It was easier for me to take a screenshot of something and mark it up and then gather my thoughts and write it up neatly. But this was some of the things that we had to think about when moving forward with transitioning. What type of information is mandatory for Cityworks to have? What and where is the information stored in Acela? So that way, when our implementation team and also our consultants were going in to merge tables, they knew where to find things. So a couple of tips for your site visit. I highly recommend doing a site visit just to see the program in action. Finding a utility with similar services. As mentioned, our site visit was the city of Oakland. We are a wastewater facility. So the city of Oakland has a collection system. They do maintain the sewer lines in Oakland, but they don't actually treat the wastewater. So it was it was helpful. And then again, it was a little bit, we had to kind of use our imagination. The part that we actually did get to see was parks and recs, and that we don't have that at all at Central Sand. So we were able to see what the software looked like, but not really related to what we did. So we had to figure that out. But like I said, it was helpful to see the software in action. But one thing I wish we did was ask for an example, ask for them to go through a work order from beginning to end. How do they close it? How do they fill out the information? What does it look like for the office staff? What does it look like for the field crew? That would have been really helpful, just instead of looking at still shots or already completed work. And then you also want to see relevant information. That kind of goes back to finding a utility with similar services. You want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. So for Parks and Rec, it would have been helpful if I asked for a service request. So if somebody calls in something that needs to be done in the park, how does the information get input into Cityworks from the call to the work order? And we could have we could have seen a better example by asking those questions. So when you go to your site visit, ask questions. Don't be afraid. This is what it's for. Bring your workflow. That workflow that we talked about, bring that, just so you can so you know what questions to ask. You know where you may get stuck, or there may be a special function that you're doing now. You want to see how that can possibly fit into the software that you're reviewing. This one is important. Confirm the software version. The software changes as upgrades happen. So if you're looking at version 3 and the current software that you may be installing is version 7, understand that it may look different. And the screenshots and the examples that you saw may not be the same once you actually get it installed. I say ask for screenshots because you're going to be seeing a lot of different scenarios during this transition and training process. So the screenshots that you have, if you're able to get them, will kind of jog your memory on what you saw during the site visit. And understand multiple visits and conversations may be necessary. You may not get everything that you need in one visit, in one conversation. So just be flexible again, and just understand that you might have to ask multiple questions over several weeks, months, however long it takes, just to kind of get a feel for the program. So now we're going into testing. You want to work out all the kinks that you can before you go live. It is really a pain to try to get something fixed after you're entering in live data for a while. So you'll want to, once you get your test site up and running, you'll want to attempt to do your normal job in a test environment. You'll want to find out what works, pay attention to what goes well, but also what's missing. What are you not able to do? And write that information down. That's very helpful for not only your consultant, but also for the implementation team to find out how come something's not working the way that you need it to. Also, while you're testing, create an SOP, not only for yourself, it'll help you to get a better grasp of the program, but it'll also help you to train others. It'll help you to have this document that you can train when new personnel come in, and you don't have to do it later. Something important, provide tablets to your field crew to test as well. Have them work in this test environment. If possible, provide different tablet options. We had iPads, and that was kind of decided for us, but it would have been nice if there was maybe a Surface or some other type of tablet option given to the field crews to not only test connectivity, but what the field crews preferred and liked and what was easier for them, since they're also using the software along with the office staff. And it gives them a voice. It makes them feel a little bit more involved in the process and not just, like they're being told what to do. So it kind of helps and gets them more engaged as well. And that's all if it's possible. Also understand there's always kinks. There's always going to be something that goes wrong and something that doesn't um, flow as well as it should. But you know, as long as you understand that that's coming, then it helps. So now we're going to go to the keep in mind. We're merging information. So just like in traffic where there's slowdowns and bottlenecks, understand that that's going to happen in this process too. So you'll want to expect the mistakes and the issues. They're going to happen. So as long as you know that they're coming, it allows you to be a little bit more patient and a little more understanding of the overall process. Double check your data, the workflows that you give, the legacy data that's received and imported, you know, by the consultant, the templates provided. Just double check everything. Have another set of eyes look at it. Make sure that everything that you're providing is correct, because this is going to be a part of your utility for a long time. So you want to make sure the information that you have is accurate. And then continue to be patient. Breathe, take a break, trust the process. It's a long journey, but as long as you understand what's ahead, then you're able to be flexible, basically. And that's what I have. So we can open it up for questions.
All right. If you have any questions, be sure to type them into the chat and we'll answer as many of those as we can. We do have one question here so far, Mary. Is that UI what a worker would see on an iPad screen?
Yes. So are we talking about the screenshot of where the map and the work order were side by side? Yes.
All right.
And it's actually helpful. It's intuitive for them. It's helpful for them because they're able to click those red wrenches and it takes them to their work order. So they're able to actually input their information for that work order and complete it from there.
Okay. Jason asked, can you mark an asset out of service? And if so, does the symbology on the map change?
So our assets are sewer mains. So if a sewer main is no longer active, we don't assess a work order against it. So the symbology, it would basically disappear. We don't input if a sewer main is no longer active, like I said, we don't put a work order against it anymore. So it's not necessarily like, I think the treatment plants, you can mark something out of service, but I'm not familiar with that one.
Okay.
Ours is a little bit different.
Okay. Here's another question. Would you hire a implementation consultant prior to selecting a CMS software vendor?
So for us, I absolutely would, but for us, it was a little bit different because our implementation team was in-house. It was staff that was already employed by the district, familiar with both the IT side, familiar with the maintenance side, familiar with what we needed as a district. And it was our GIS team that acted as our implementation team. So they were the ones that were familiar with our mapping system that they selected. So it was helpful because they knew all sides of it. So if you need to hire someone from outside, I would, and I would make sure that that team knows exactly what you need within your utility so that they're able to provide that service. They're able to provide um, be that liaison between you, the software company, and also whoever is going to be implementing it in.
Okay. Jason asks, so the pumps, valves, etc., are not part of this work order system?
The pumping stations are not no. So our collection system are basically the sewer mains, it's manholes, creek crossings. It's not a part of the collection system, which is what I am. The treatment plant also uses Cityworks. I'm not on the treatment plant side. So I don't know what exactly theirs entails, but I know it's a lot more involved. There's a lot more pieces on the treatment plant side than there are on the collection system side.
Okay. Do you guys deal with laterals? If so, does this program have a section for them?
So no, we don't. We only maintain the sewer mains for Central Sand. We don't maintain homeowner laterals at all. So um, there's nothing for that within Cityworks, but I know that there are some utilities that do maintain laterals, and I believe Cityworks can accommodate that, but we don't within this district.
That question was from Gerardo. Also, here's a question. Can you explain more about how the history data merged with the CMS software? Was it smooth?
So no, it wasn't smooth. It basically, the screenshot that I showed where everything was marked up, the Acela used various data tables that needed to be nested in order to merge that information in. That was something else that our GIS staff worked tirelessly with to make sure that that information was provided to the consultant to merge in. So I had to go through my part of the project was to go through the tables and show where the front end part, where on the back end table that was held, what information we needed. It didn't exactly translate as we hoped, but that's another reason why I say get started early on working on your workflow, because that took a lot of time and I kind of felt the time crunch because I didn't start early. So it was, by the time it was necessary, we're spending a lot of time trying to figure out exactly where things are held on the back end of Acela. So that's why I say start it now before it's necessary, and then you'll kind of be able to work through and find the stuff. But expect there to be issues. They're not going to get it right on the first try because your consultant does not work for your company. They don't know exactly what you're looking for. So you want to make sure that you get that first wave of information in and then have time to check it in case there are mistakes. You can go back to them and ask them to redo it.
Okay. How is the CMS working now?
It's great. We've pretty much worked out a lot of the kinks. As stated, we still have some ongoing updates and improvements and things that we would love to see happen. But it's pretty seamless for us now. We're able to get the reports that we need. We're able to get the work out. There's no longer a 3 or 4 day lag time period for our preventative maintenance schedules. Once a schedule is closed in Cityworks, the next one is initiated. It's there, it's waiting. It's great. It's really an efficient software for us.
Have you had any updates? And if so, how has the implementation of the updates gone?
So that's still being handled by our GIS team. They are in charge of our updates. And we did just have a major update a couple of weeks ago, and something breaks. You kind of expect it. Not it it may not be something major, but in this case, we had some items that no longer worked. So it's up to us as end users to let them know. They do a great job in communicating with us and saying, there's going to be a Cityworks update. on this date, expect, look out for something. If something's not working, let us know. And we do. So we still have that communication with them. We let them know when things are broken or not working, and they do their best to get it fixed. And if they can't get it fixed, they still have that relationship with Cityworks, with the software company, and they work on a patch to make sure everything is up and running. But it hasn't been, we haven't had a major downtime with the upgrades. They do a great job of making sure that, whatever patch or fix or upgrade that they're implementing won't, that we won't be out of service once it's done.
Okay. Alex asked, what types of concerns did your IT department share with you during this process?
They had concerns about security. They also had concerns about the iPads. It was kind of our IT department that decided to move with iPads because it worked with our network. So we didn't really have much of a say in that, which was, it was fine. It just would have been nice to know, to have that tested before we actually went live, because as stated, we found that there were dead spots within our service area. So there were places where, the field crew has their iPad with all their work and the maps there. And if they don't have connectivity, then they really couldn't get their work, which was never something that we had to deal with when they were using paper. So.
Okay. With all the new software that you guys adopted, how was training handled? How much training was necessary? And how is that training maintained as new people come on to learn these new systems?
Well, most of the training was deprogramming the folks that were there from the old way that we did business to the new way. So that was the majority of the training. There were a lot of meetings. The field crew, not so much. They had to. We didn't really bring them in for training until it was time to show them what Cityworks looked like and what it would look like for them, what their monthly schedules would look like. For the office staff, we were in training, it seemed like every day for months. And it was literally having to deprogram saying, but that's not the way that we did it before, because we were learning a completely new system, a new way of doing business. So I would say it was a solid 4 months for the office staff to get caught up to speed. And once we were fully trained, then that's when we brought in the supervisors to show them, okay, this is what your inbox is going to look like, and this is what is expected from you guys. And then from there, we kind of trickled it down to the field crew to show them, this is what the mobile app looks like. This is what the tablet version looks like, and you let them choose what they prefer, what they're comfortable with. But as far as training new employees, this is our way of business. This is the software that we use now. So now that we've been using it every day, we still have that test site that's available. So for the newest person that was in my department, I showed her how to do a work order from beginning to end, and allowed her to do several in that test site. So that way, if she does make a mistake or messes up, it's not messing with live data. It's in the test site. So it doesn't really matter. We can delete it, we can edit it, we can do whatever. But mistakes are how you learn. So it's great to still have that available for use. So that way you can still get familiar. It looks exactly like our live version. You can get familiar with the software, but you're not messing up too much within our live data.
Okay. Has there been any instances where the treatment plant's issues or concerns or lessons learned has crossed over to the collections lessons learned, or do you guys interface or share some ideas or anything between the two of you?
We do sometimes. A lot of the issues on the treatment plant side don't necessarily correspond to the issues on the collection system side. when I said to be flexible and patient and be prepared to stop, that was speaking from experience, because we started this journey moving towards Cityworks together, both collection system and treatment plant. But we found out that the treatment plant wasn't quite ready to go as far as we were. So we kind of had to pivot and make some adjustments. And CSO actually launched before the treatment plant did. So there was, like I said, there's a lot more moving parts in the plant. So there are a lot more things that needed to go into Cityworks for the treatment plant than necessarily for CSO. So we kind of had to, but some of the mistakes that we made while transitioning in, the treatment plant was able to avoid. So it kind of, we don't necessarily cross often, but there are some lessons that we learned that the treatment plant was able to avoid. And it does help that I said our implementation team is our GIS group. So they work for both sides. They still are a part of the district. They're very familiar with both the collection system and the treatment plant. And so they're helping all of us navigate this together.
Okay. We have someone who's raised their hand. Osberto, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, I typically charge when you don't say my name correctly, but this time I'm gonna let it go. So just joking. So anyways, one of the things we implement in systems, specifically digital, my concern is that the human factor, and it is that a lot of agencies rely, is going to rely on communicating digitally. But when there's problems, they gotta be a human that ready to pick up the phone and answer the questions, to troubleshoot, to fix the problem, because sometimes it can be an emergency situation, and if we rely too much in just electronic stuff, it's going to defeat the purpose of having that system that could be efficient. I find it many times that as we transition to a digital age, we're expecting more efficiency, but we forget that what makes a system efficient is having access for support. So, I'm just throwing out there, as part of a program or implementing a system there, to have a human there to pick up the phone, to answer the questions right away, be dedicated to the system. And that is a concern, big time concern. It's beautiful to have all this digital stuff, but no support, then doesn't mean anything. It's not going to work. Just a general comment. Thank you.
I agree. And we're still there. My team is still there. The GIS staff is still there. So if the field crew run into an issue that they can't fix, they can pick up the phone and call. They know where to find all of us. That goes for the supervisors, and that goes for myself and my team. We're able to pick up the phone and call our GIS staff, who's able to pick up the phone and call their contacts with the software company. So I absolutely agree. Still having that human contact is necessary, but the part that this digital system helps with is we don't have to do so much duplicate entry anymore. So now we're able to be more efficient in being available to the field crew. So we absolutely are not trying to eliminate that human aspect. That's not what this is about at all. It's just about, being more effective with the work.
I have a question if I can.
Go ahead, Gerardo.
As you guys notice, most of these collection systems are older staff, right? So the pushback is tremendous. I have the same situation here where we're trying to transition to laptops and so on and so forth, but people are so used to the paperwork side of being their job. How did you guys go about that transition, and how hard was the pushback?
The pushback was very hard. We still get some pushback. There were some older folks that just couldn't handle it, and they decided to retire behind it. you're going to have the pushback. It's going to be there. But to the part for us was to just make it it doesn't look the same, but to make it, what's the word that I'm looking for? As familiar as possible. So we use some of the same language that was on their paper form in the Cityworks template. We made sure that we have drop downs now, so they don't have to guess as to what they're looking for. It's there in a menu for them to select. The hardest part was getting over the fact that we're going to be using these iPads instead of paper. And to be honest, some of the crew still write down their work orders. They still write down their results, and then they just transfer it to the iPad. And if that works for them, that's fine. You know, just you want to make it as flexible as possible. You know, they understand that this is how it's going to be. We're not going back to doing business the old way, but however you can support them in this transition, you know, do the best that you can. You're going to get pushback. We still get pushback. We're, you know, rounding the corner to year 5. We still get pushback, and, you know, I wish we could go back to this way. It comes with the territory.
Yeah. I'm not, I hate to say the age thing, right? Because I don't want to get into no union situations or anything like that, but it's just a matter of fact, right? I mean, we're totally different technology wise and stuff like that. I guess my bigger question was, without offending or using an age group, were you guys able to have like computer classes? What kind of training did the employees get prior to that? And was that an expense that you weren't expecting to actually transition?
No, actually, so honestly, I don't know if you remember, I mentioned we kind of had a hybrid work environment. So some of the field crew were kind of used to already inputting their information into a laptop for their monthly schedules. They were used to that already. So it was kind of taking that part away. It wasn't live data. I don't know if they knew that or not. It wasn't, you know, being pushed directly to the network. We had to kind of finagle it a little bit and get it right. But they were used to that. They knew that that was something that they had to do. That was part of their duties for the month. So it was just a matter of getting it out of their mind that they were no longer having to write it on a piece of paper. They could close it out right there. That took a little getting used to. For the first couple of months, a lot of people were waiting until the end of the month to write, you know, to close all their work orders out. And it's like, no, you don't have to do that. You know, the end of the week, okay, or the end of the day, fine, but you could actually do it as you go. It's about acquiescing to their comfort level, to just making sure that they're comfortable. It did take a lot, I will say, it did take a lot of training to get them acclimated to the iPads and, you know, finding what worked for them. The mobile app worked a lot because it was easier for them to manipulate with their hands. It's bigger and it's actually built for an iPad. So it's easier for them to touch and kind of get what they needed to. The tablet version, it looks basically like what we use in the office. So there are some field crews that like it, but then it's a little hard to manipulate that on the iPad. So it's kind of just, you know, finding what they're comfortable with. And it's going to take a while. Unfortunately, like I said, there's still some folks that like to push back about it, but this just is what it is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, we're out of time, and we're glad that you guys could join us and ask all these great questions. And thank you, Mary, for sharing such great information and sharing your experience and everything.